Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Frank and Stan chat. This is actually the fourth academic year that we're breaking into here, Stan, and it's episode 115. And I'm delighted to say that Harry Hortyn's joined us. Hello, Harry.
Hi, Frank. Hi, Stan.
Hi.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, perhaps we should just do a little introduction here, Harry. I mean, what do you do? And how do we know each other?
So I first got to know you, Frank, when I was working as the director of a charity called Universify, which runs a year-long program to help disadvantaged students improve their attainment and get into university. I kind of got into that through what is kind of more my main day-to-day job now, which is as CEO of Oxford Summer Courses, which runs summer courses in Oxford predominantly for international students to give them a taste of what university life is like here in the UK and particularly at Oxford.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was, I remember visiting the students, the first batch of students that went down to Oxford. And I have to say, what I really liked was the fact that it was not about Oxford University. I mean, that was a lovely setting, wasn't it? But it was about, have you really thought about what this experience could mean for you as an individual? I think that was the telling thing. And some of the parents thought, oh, the kids are getting into Oxford, but actually we had to explain that it's more about that experience, isn't it? And what it means.
Yeah, it's a bit like using Oxford as the kind of magnet or the thing to get people's attention. Or I guess like when we had the Olympics in London in 2012 and people aren't suddenly going to become like sprinters or long jumpers, but the buzz around something that was exciting and the kind of almost a brand that was known to them was a way of getting people's attention and getting them to maybe take some steps in the right direction.
Yeah, I found it really interesting. Just also seeing the way that the students react. There were some of the students that we took down were, because they meet other students, don't they? It's not all from one group or whatever. I think that's part of the dynamic of it, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, it was a slightly, I would say, an entrepreneurial approach rather than a strategic one to getting the schools signed up to recruit the students for us. So we worked with some of the colleges in Oxford and they have specific link regions, but then through my kind of personal network and friends of friends, and some of the tutors that got involved in it, they knew schools or particular areas of the country that they thought it would be a good fit for. Yeah, and so we had lots of students coming from the West Country, around Bristol, South London, Midlands, Stoke and Manchester. It was great to on the first night to hear like a variety of different accents and people meeting the first ever person that they'd met from that part of the country.
So how do you cope then with lockdown? How did the organisation continue to run?
Yeah, so we moved the program online. I guess is probably familiar to many of your subscribers that that rapid movement from trying to reconceptualize something which is an in-person experience into something which is online. And I suppose for us it was a slightly bigger challenge because part of the program is living in the buildings that make up the college, is that experience of living away from home potentially for the first time, leaving your hometown and that taste of independence and seeing how you react to that. So yeah, we worked quite hard to work on the sessions that would try and explore some of these things in an online way, and yeah, sort of bided our time until when it was safe to start bringing students together again, which was Easter this year. And yeah, we've had a full batch this summer, which is really positive.
Great. Well, Stan, how are you?
It's like welcome back into it after a break.
Actually, I had missed it. I mean, it's I've been away, been abroad, so it would have been difficult, but I've missed these sort of catch-ups. It's just on a personal level,
Yeah, it's what's been weird is not having to think of things for a Friday morning.
No, but there are times when actually I've thought of things and thought, oh, I wish there had been a Frank chat, you know.
Well, not much has happened, has it, over the summer?
Oh no, not at all. I mean, I don't know if we'll talk about it, but just we did these, Harry, as a sort of record of lockdown. It's always quite good to sort of locate an event, but when we look back on these, but today is the day when the price cap for energy has gone to something like 3,600 on average or so. I think that's the figure. A massive increase. And bearing in mind, we would try and bring this back to schools, you know, budget's already set. You know, many schools are not in these sort of long-term contracts anymore for energy.
And they're not subject to the price cap anyway.
No. So, you know, it's a real major problem. I mean, and again, bring it back to education is this morning, there is not a single minister. I don't know if you're aware who the energy minister is at the moment. It's Greg Clark. But Greg Clark is nowhere to be seen on television. The secretary, the chancellor has issued a statement, but again, keep your head down. It's bank holiday weekend and it's probably going to be sunny. So people may forget, you know, but actually this is really about leadership. And that's what we were talking about. We always bring it back to that a major event like this within a community of a school, you would expect somebody to front it up and actually try and give some reassurance about, yeah, we'll get through this together. And not having that voice, I think, this morning is a serious own goal. But anyway,
I'm genuinely concerned about how schools are going to cope, because there seems to be a suggestion that, you know, you have enough money in your budget. Well, schools don't.
No.
I know they sometimes refer to this, there's so many millions in reserve, but that's just not true of a lot of schools.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of schools that are really up against it. There are some schools, though, that I'm not saying are not, but they're, you know, inevitably in budgets, there are some that are, for whatever reason, you know, have got a little sort of reserve pot, but there are others that many others haven't. Harry, are you going to say something there?
Yeah, it just seems to me to be quite if you took a step back from it, a weird way to set things up, to say to a school, right, you're going to have to compromise on something else so that you can pay more on energy when the energy companies are making really big profits. It's like there's a literal redistribution from the school to the shareholders of the massive oil and gas companies, which just, I'm not sure anyone would be voting for that if it was put to them as, you know, I understand this is the way that the market works, but definitely need some kind of intervention to prevent that kind of perverse outcome from happening.
Yeah, agreed.
I think the other thing is that where there's been suggestions of how things might be put right, all of them seem to be to give money to the energy companies so that they can keep the bills down. Well, you know, what were these set up for? They were set up to be competitive to the point that they would bring prices down.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing, we'll get off this now, but if I can have the final word on it, but it's not as if this is unexpected. No. This has been known. This day has been sort of anticipated, and people have accurately forecast what that price cap is going to go to. So it really is about, well, where is it? You know, the reason that there is a Conservative Party leadership contest going on, in a way, this affects every single citizen in every shape and form, you know, across the country, that actually this is where leadership, government needs to show leadership, regardless of whether there's a leadership election going on or not. Okay, let's get on to what's caught your eye this week. Right, so Stan, what's caught your eye this week?
Perfect link that, Frank, because that's what I was going to talk about, the leadership campaign, and listening in or reading from journalists some of the things that have been said. And I fully understand that they are pitching to a particular audience in order to get votes, in order to get the job. But it seems to be that they've not realized that the rest of the world is listening in, you know, as if this is just a secret hustings between them and some of their members. And it just reminded me of some of the car crashes I've seen in head teacher interviews, where potential head teachers have not recognised that the governors that they're speaking to are also members of staff, are also parents, have got an investment in the school, they're proud of their school. And I've seen people go into an interview thinking they know what the governors want to hear and presenting that, and it being an absolute disaster, because often it's not what the actual person believes in. It's not authentic. It's, I think I know what they want me to say at this point, so I'll say it. And sometimes telling governors that the school needs a lot of change and things aren't right, and when
and
they've
it's been bad for a number of years,
yeah.
you know, and then the parents are thinking, well, are you saying to me, therefore I should not have asked my child?
A very popular head teacher's just left, and the first thing they're going to do is have a real go at the what's been left, his legacy. I just think it just reminded me so much of, you know, I felt as though a bit like Michael Spicer wanted to be in their ear saying, you do know other people are listening to this, don't you? You know, some of these things you're advocating now that are heading towards the bizarre, really, you know, you might be held to account for that later. But who knows? It seems mad.
Yeah, it feels like they're simply saying what they need to sort of win this first battle without realizing that actually, you know, what comes after is possibly a bigger challenge, you know, running the country. It's like speaking to, you know, to just a very small constituency that makes up, you know, not even a big part of the country, and that's the real job starts after the hustings, right?
Definitely. I mean, and also you end up with major U-turns, don't you? When you realize, actually, I haven't thought this through. I just said it because it got me the job, but actually I didn't really mean it. You know? I mean,
and all on TV, you know, all with a video of you saying this is what you said you would do straight away. Where are you?
Liz Truss can say, actually, the jury's come back in and Macron is a friend. So the jury was out, but it's now back and it's all okay. That one's settled. No worries.
So Harry, what's caught your eye this week?
Well, I actually have a brand new baby daughter who's about 3.5 months. And so we've been spending a lot of time looking at this book, which is Tummy Time, which doesn't contain any words, but a lot of these like psychedelic snails and teddy bears. And when you place the baby on their front, they kind of look up and you know, quite amazed by it. So it's been fun playing with my daughter Bonnie and this book over the last few weeks, and she's did her first rollover last night. So seeing these kind of development milestones, you know, come and go pretty quickly is amazing to see. In, you know, a 24-hour period, she can now do something that she couldn't previously do, and you just have a ringside seat for how quickly the brain develops. It's amazing.
Interesting though, isn't it, that you didn't plan for that? You know, you didn't say, oh well, we'll put the book here, you know, we'll open it on that page, that'll encourage her to roll over. You know what I mean? It was all part of just an experience, wasn't it, really? Whether an outcome was a positive outcome, but it wasn't something that I think you and your partner set about saying, oh, we've got to get her over, you know, she's got to reach her target, you know, she's got to roll over within the first 3 months, you know.
It was my wife's turn to cook, so I was just trying to make sure that Bonnie wasn't too much of a distraction in that like half-an-hour window. It was like, quick, let's do tummy time. That will keep her interested for like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting you used the word play. Very interesting that you used the word play to describe that.
I was just say we have a newborn in the family, and we've been watching those exact same things. Tummy time, I've learned about, didn't exist when my children were growing up, but tummy time, and the same book, funnily enough, but also things like when they recognize that their hands belong to them. And it's really, you can see that over a number of days, from just thrashing about to actually focusing on something and moving a hand, not to grab it yet, but moving a hand towards that and recognizing that that's part of it is fascinating.
Yeah,
you can almost see the brain working.
my daughter's gone from being a kind of mad conductor who's like kind of waving her arms everywhere to it's a bit more like a sort of boxer who's in round 12 where they're kind of like lurching for stuff. So it's still not quite full motor function, but you know, you do see these improvements, and on a day-by-day basis, which is, I think it's quite different to how at least my experience in teaching is that you know, once in a blue moon you might get that sort of penny drops moment and you feel really like oh, yeah, I explained that in a great way and it finally got someone to understand it. But most of the time it happens much slower than that, and yeah, maybe you have to kind of wait a little bit longer for the payoff. So it's quite rewarding being able to see it happening in real time.
I think also is the bit it makes the point about learning, about, because I don't know if your daughter can do that today. You know what I mean? It might be
immediately you're like, oh, I wonder if she can do it again, and then not interested.
No, so it does sort of like, in a way, it's that sort of drip, isn't it, into the pot? You know, in effect, that's what learning is. You know, and it is about the building up of these sorts of experiences, which they need to revisit. And I think this is, you know, true in for a 3-month-old as it is for a 33-year-old. You know, I mean, you just need to revisit some of this stuff in order to keep it topped up. But
and
yeah,
those of us brought up on Piaget would say you need to play at 33 before.
But yeah, well, I think that's why I said to Harry, you know, that word play, you know, if it isn't fun and you can't see the you know, in a way, you know, the enjoyment that she probably got from you responding so positively to this experience, you know, she didn't know what you were saying, but there's probably something in your face, something in the glint in your eye, you know, that made her feel as though that's probably, you know, good. You know, it's a good sensation.
Yeah, it's one of the things that they mention in the sort of development books, is like be very over the top with praise whenever they do something positive or take one of these development steps, which actually isn't a million miles away from the kind of growth mindset approach, which is like, you know, kind of praise effort when they're you know, when they do something well.
Yeah. Also, did you have there was another book you were showing us before?
Yeah, so
you have 2 things caught your eye this week.
Yeah, so I'm being greedy and taking you know, the two bites of this cherry, but this other book, Mission Lit, was something we've been doing a workshop on this week with the Oxford Summer Courses students. It's all about sustainable business and how there's a competitive advantage for businesses that are thinking about how to be sustainable and have the kind of people, purpose, planet at their core. It's really interesting to see how strongly it resonated with these young people who were 18 to 24, and many of them interested in the world of business and entrepreneurship. And we were lucky enough to have the kind of author explaining the ideas, and it's predominantly a series of interviews with the heads of different kind of reasonably well-known sustainable brands like Patagonia and All Plants and Innocent Smoothies and Dame and people like this who are quite far along on this journey. But it got me thinking quite a lot about how, particularly the B Corp way of taking an organization so that you have this certification that says that you're thinking about things more than profit. You know, how relevant that is to Oxford Summer Courses as an organisation. It's an direction that we could go in, but also wider within education. That I suppose one of the key tests is, if your organisation doubled overnight, would that be a good thing for society? Would that be a good thing for the planet? And hopefully most organisations within their education space can at least aspire to a yes for that question. So I would have thought that most of the sector, you know, is already quite far along on that. You know, the I suppose the ethics or the purpose that people, you know, go into education is normally, I think, with a bit of heart, a bit of sustainability, a bit of that way of thinking about the world, perhaps more so than other sectors. But yeah, it just got me thinking about a few of those sort of things.
So yeah,
Andy Hargreaves, in his book Sustainable Leadership, picks up the same idea, takes some big companies and says, well, what are they doing to make themselves sustainable? And it's that engagement with a wider public beyond we need to make a profit. It's about brand, it's about quality, and it's about serving the community. And those are the businesses that are sustaining. At the time that he wrote the book, there were many high street names who were just going out of business altogether, because it appeared they were chasing the profits and not moving with what needed to be done.
Yeah, one of the leaders talks about profit as fuel rather than like what you're aiming for. It's like it's almost the byproduct of pursuing your purpose, and actually you can then use it to kind of fuel your journey as you go further towards achieving your mission. So I guess it's a slightly different way of thinking about what business is there to do, compared to Milton Friedman in the 70s saying the only was it the only business of business is business, and
yes,
the only shareholders, you just have to enhance shareholder value and not do anything else. I think that is starting to change. Certainly, the feedback from the young people in this workshop was very much that is the future.
Yeah, it's about redistribution, though, isn't it? That's always a sort of dangerous. So I always feel as though, particularly some politicians, they don't like that word of redistribution because it's sort of seen as very left, But actually, this is about sort of rebalancing, isn't it? In some respects, about what we were talking about before about the price cap. That if actually some elements of the economy are actually sort of profiting hugely. There is questions. I suspect most people would question whether or not that gets to a point where there needs to be some level of redistribution in order to balance things out, so that in effect, that's the sustainability of their, because no point if everybody can't afford to pay their energy, having energy companies, because actually nobody will pay. So there's got to be some sort of redistribution somewhere along the line.
Yeah, and
I do like that, thinking differently about profit or purpose of business, because I can remember when I was a head teacher and SATs first came out, and the focus was to shift everything away from what you did in order to achieve these results. And I can remember thinking, well, I don't agree with that. I have what I consider to be a greater role for these young people that I was looking at. We have more to do with them than just get them through these tests. And I struggled with that for quite some time, until I came to the conclusion that getting good results was a byproduct of running a really good school, and children enjoying the time in school, becoming better citizens, and doing all those things right. Then actually, you didn't have to work on it being focused on good results. They were a sort of a byproduct of what you were trying to get.
Yeah.
And once you can get your head around that and think, yeah, well, I'm still getting good results, but I'm doing it in a way that makes these children better citizens, they enjoy education, and they'll continue to learn when they leave us, that becomes then something that's worthwhile and something to drive for.
I remember talking to, I was in a pool in Ibiza with my son-in-law and our little 3-year-old, our granddaughter. And he was talking about the Key Stage 2 SATs results. And I said, well, how much of those SATs results would you give up so that every child in year 6 can swim 25 meters? And how many of those, what percentage of your SATs results would you give up to ensure that every child can ride a bike? And you then start thinking about, well, this to me gets to the point of, obviously you want everybody to get the best results they can. But if your sole purpose in life is actually to get the results without the other stuff, then actually that isn't a good education. And actually there are times when this feels as if, I think universities are very good at this, actually trying to draw out what it is that's beyond just the result, that actually there's much more going on here that people want to know about, because it's those elements that are going to contribute strongly to their future as well as those exam results, you know.
But yet we're actively narrowing the curriculum in secondary schools, aren't we? Whether it's by design or default.
Yeah.
You know, the arts subjects are now on the way out if we're not careful.
I think the results for those cohorts who went through lockdown teaching under the pandemic is a perfect example, because they were being like, you know, given good results, right? On a I'm not saying that they didn't work hard for those, but it looks like that is not the right way to do it, where they're being like handed out results. You're getting grade inflation as a byproduct of that, because then you've achieved a high grade, but without the right kind of learning experience that goes into that, and potentially without the same kind of knowledge as like previous and subsequent cohorts.
Yeah, I mean, this is it gets to the heart of what a good education is, though, doesn't it? Really, for me, you know.
Well, and also, how do you try and make sure that the right standards there? Because if by not measuring anything at all, that would seem slightly overly trusting, perhaps, or you know, it's too difficult if you don't measure anything at all. But then if your only focus is on measurement and results, then you've gone too far the other way. It's certainly a challenge to get the appropriate level of sort of performance management, for want of a better word.
Yeah. Well, I'm just looking at the time. We're half an hour. We've gone into it half an hour. For me, what caught my eye this week was having come back from a visit around some of the Nordic countries. I was really struck by the visit to Denmark, and apart from that, everybody rides a bike in Denmark. I know it's a relatively flat country, you know, I think. And we visited 3 different cities in Denmark. But I was also struck by the fact that very few people use locks. You don't lock your bike, you just lean it against the wall. There were 1 or 2, you know, the most expensive bikes had locks, but I think 90% of bikes didn't have a lock. But I think I was really struck by the conversation I was having with the university lecturer, who was moaning about the fact that students in his city, you know, were actually given an allowance, a sort of grant that was more than his monthly pension from the government. And he sort of laboured this quite a lot, you know, sort of we're walking around the city and he said, and look, these are university, this is where the university students stay, and this is where the, you know, some elderly residents live in this block, you know, and he was really playing up to it. He really was. And of course, at the end of it, you know, you sort of started to think, oh, perhaps the balance here isn't quite right. But he said at the end, he said, yeah, but the problem is, he said, having said all that, unless these students actually keep the economy rolling, and it's a very competitive world market, you know, we won't have a pension to rely on. So there's a bit of an investment that he understands that from a university background, but he understands the need for that. And actually, it was really for us here. I think I heard the sort of ASCL leader, Jeff Barton, talking about, you know, funding will not get back to 2010 levels in education until I think it's 2 years' time. You know, so in effect, we've stripped quite a lot of investment in education out since 2010. And actually, I think long term, that's going to have an impact on the economy, you know, and other decisions that the government's made about, you know, immigration and stuff like that. That's, you know, that is not there to help us. You know what I mean? It's become more difficult. I think this reliance on our own young people, you know, is become even more important. You know, and I think that unless we do invest more, we're going, you know, I don't think there's much left to take out. You know, I just don't think there's much left, and the impact will be, you know, it talks about sustainability. You know, companies that are not investing in R&D, those that are not investing in their staff, they're not going to last long. You know, so even if it's not just about saving the planet, it's about saving the business. You know, so yeah,
it's one of the first things that gets cut, isn't it? When if you start to think, you know, if your time horizon shrinks and you start to think increasingly short term, then those investments that are going to pay off, particularly in training up staff, or in training the next generation, the ones that start to go. It's interesting that maybe there's a kind of Scandinavian mindset. I don't want to stereotype too much here, but that idea of having a slightly more kind of socially embedded way of viewing society. You rarely hear that kind of argument made in the UK for investing in higher education. It's more at a personal level. It helps this individual then go on and have a successful career. I don't often hear it made at the societal level about it, producing a skilled workforce and helping grow the economy in the future. It's much more at the individual level.
I would agree, and I think because it's at that individual level, and people assume that I've got into university, therefore I'll end up with a job where I'll be well off, has lost that bit that says, but so will the country if a lot of people are making that movement. And I think the culture of the country for the last certainly more than 10 years has been, again, the push is for individuals to do better, but actually as a society we then don't like the people who are doing better. We've got an envy, if you like, of people who do better than me. I don't mind people being better, but not quite as good as me, or not earning quite as much as me. Hence we have now with the rail strikes, the quote on how much a train driver earns, which is irrelevant to the whole of the workforce. That's but hey, those train drivers, that's terrible that they earn so much. Well, why is it terrible? I want the person who's driving my train to be trained. I want him to know what he's doing. I want to be safe on the train. So why is that terrible? Well, really, because he's earning more than me.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fast. I mean, I was saying to you, Stan, that I'm very keen to go over and do a proper study in Denmark or in Norway, just to see how they do it. I mean, they still have the problems. I mean, everybody, of course, if you make university life really attractive, then actually they have a problem in getting people not to go to university. You know what I mean? So they have a shortage, the skills shortage in terms of laborers, craftsmen, that sort of thing. They have that problem, which is what we have as well. But actually they've made university life seem as if it's the only goal worth going for, because actually you just get looked after by the state for a longer period of time. So actually he was saying that there's now this rebalancing of that, and actually that's quite tricky once you've actually made university education free. Actually to start creeping in onto that, actually in order to sort of balance out somewhere else is a problem.
Hasn't Biden been giving student loans back? Or I don't know, I've not read the thing, but I just saw a headline. Well, are they saying that maybe student loans is not the way to go?
I think they were saying that Biden was saying that for low income people, that they will never pay off that loan. So it's like a proper debt to them. Whereas I feel as though in the UK that university debt, well, currently, if it's not paid off within a certain length of time, in effect, some of that is sort of like rolled away. But actually, that sits with the individual in America, and actually, I think it's graduated. What he's suggesting is it's being graduated. But of course, there's resentment then, going back to the point you were making, Stan, that actually America, because there was, while we were on holiday, we did meet some Americans who were very resentful of the Biden approach, because they were saying, well, I paid off mine. It was hard work, but I paid off my $76,000, so why are people getting these free handouts? And I think the point he was making there was that for the very poorest, they will never pay it off, and unless there is that mechanism, you'll prevent some of the poorest able students from wanting to go to university unless we do something to make it more attractive. So anyway,
there's definitely an interesting kind of intergenerational cost of living type point here, because I have had this discussion with my dad a couple of times, because as I mentioned at the start, we've got a young baby and talking a lot to other people from our NCT group or from the local area who are in similar situations. And, you know, people talk about the cost of housing, cost of nursery, and whether you will have 2 people going back to work or 1. My dad's point was like, oh, you know, your generation, everyone just wants to get back to work. They don't care about raising their children. It's like, look, Dad, your first house cost 2.5 times a kind of non-graduate salary.
Yeah.
And now, you know, the average house price in London, say, is like 500 to 600K. So that's clearly not 2.5 times the average salary. So, you know, it's quite a different context in which, you know, the basic necessities and you know, how much they cost, it makes a big difference. And to your point, Stan, around, you know, how much people are getting paid, you know, it's a really important part of that, like, because you have to look at you have to look at the outgoings as well as what's coming in order to make sure you keep your head above water.
Yeah, definitely.
And going back to what we said about the energy things, that's pushing people who have budgeted, you know, even if they've budgeted carefully, they know what their outgoings are, they know. You can't suddenly budget if you're on a tight budget for an extra £2,000-3,000 a year going out.
No.
For no difference and nothing new coming in.
Yeah. Anyway, that was quite a nice little neat sort of circular discussion. Harry, let's call it, we've got room 101 just to finish with. What are you going to put in room 101?
So I would like to put in room 101 hype around EdTech as the kind of savior of all of education's issues. You know, call me a traditionalist because what we do is mainly like classroom teaching. It probably hasn't changed that much since Oxford started teaching like 800 years ago. You have a kind of learned scholar instructing, you know, enthusiastic, motivated young learners. But, you know, that's the kind of essence of what we do. And I think technology can definitely enhance and it can definitely open up access. And those are great things. But I find that I can't really move within the education press without, you know, reading an article every day about how there's a whizzy ed tech solution to something. And I don't know, I find maybe it distracts us a lot of the time from focusing on the bread and butter and what actually improves outcomes.
I agree entirely. I mean, I'm heavily involved in trying to get digital devices into the hands of every single child in Blackpool. Not in order that they can play on the digital device, but I think there are some things that I take for granted, like, for example, this. You know, I clocked on this morning. I trusted the Virgin Media signal was going to work because I paid the bill. I've got a really nice system to do it on, you know, and actually if I want to go and search out that author that you referred to before, who you've been sharing, you know, with your students, I can do it. But actually there are, you know, I think the lockdowns highlighted the fact that there are some children who don't have that opportunity. And actually, the one thing I've been saying is that this is not about replacing teaching, you know, traditional teaching. There is a place for that. But there are some things that some kids have an advantage over others, which I think is limiting. And, you know, I don't know where I'm getting the money from, Harry, but it's going to be the last thing I do in Blackpool is to try and achieve that and actually help teachers, you know, understand the tech better, because some of them, there's a lot of stuff, even if it's just like, I remember speaking to somebody about the use of Excel spreadsheets and how you collate data on it. You know, a lot of teachers are not familiar with just that level. No. And if they're not familiar with how to use that, the kids don't either, you know, so it's I
was shown something just recently, a very, very extensive computer program for self-evaluation with graphs, with everything you could want, except for, you know, actually all it tells you is what you already told it. Because you've put all the inputs in to say this is where the school is, and you've got fabulous pictures and graphs to tell you what you already know. And I just felt as though we're still in that stage of being impressed with what it throws up on the screen, rather than what its purpose is. you know, and its purpose is surely to, it goes back to the one I used to have when I was working in Lancashire. We have lots of data, but nobody actually interprets that data to give you what you need to know next. It's, you know, the data analysis seems to be, we'll share the data with you, but we
Rather
won't
than
actually
interpret it.
analyze it and come with some conclusions.
Yeah. Okay, well, it's the first of our new academic year, and it's great to have you, Harry. Thank you for joining us, and good luck with, you know, being a parent and and acting as a trustee now for Universify. And just want to thank you for the opportunity you gave or are giving to a lot of the kids that I used to be responsible for. It's a really important opportunity for them. So Stan, I'll see you next week.
Yeah, and then I'll be away for the next one.
Yeah, so Susan Brickell has agreed to be the guest.
All right.
So a replacement has been found, Stan. So
there you go.
It won't be as good. It won't
Sustainable. I was easily replaced.
Okay.
Recycle.
Yeah, you are replaceable. Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Harry. And
yeah, I've really enjoyed it. Thanks, guys.
No,
Thanks.
good.
Thanks,
and
Harry.
I'll stop the button now, and we'll see everybody, hopefully all being well, next week.